All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the return of Fic Night. This is the August 2021 Fic Night, and tonight I am Mage Maddie, and I have with me maraudertimes or Lo. We are reading her fic, Kingdom Keys. I am Mage Maddie, and let me mute my other tab. And this fic is in the Harry Potter universe. It is Next Generation. It is rated mature for a few different things: self-harm, sexual content, substance abuse, suicide, and violence. So also there are some content warnings for dying/grieving and panic attacks. But without that, with all that out of the way, let's dive into chapter 1 of this mysterious fic.
Woo! Sorry.
All right. He can sense her arrival long before the haunting echo of footsteps against cobblestone reaches him, the air around a protruding electric cable on the roof across from him rippling slightly as a surge of electrical energy pulses through the block. A half-second later, the telltale crack emanates from the direction of the apparition point, albeit muffled by the darkened buildings that surround it. In the minutes it takes her to make her way to the alley he's been surveying, he continues to keep watch, narrowed eyes searching for anything out of order under the light of the moon overhead. The small offices with tired neon signs flickering in the dark remain as silent as ever, the occupants long gone for the weekend. Life can only be found in the periodic bursts of laughter from the small bar near the end of the way. Any residence is either abandoned or silent. From his perch on the edge of the rooftop for a particularly vacant detective's agency, he's not well positioned to hear her approach, but years of careful listening catch her practiced gait. When she turns down the street, he's not surprised when her eyes immediately find his, her steps never faltering. Just as he was waiting for her, so was she expecting him. A few more seconds bring her closer to the area beneath him, his cue to jump to the ground below, the fall against the ground below cushioned by a simple whisper as she breathes into the night right before he touches down beside her. "You're late, Diana," he chastises, matching her pace. "We were expected a quarter hour ago." She takes a long breath, though how she can stomach the pungent stench of stale liquor and sweat that seems to permeate every corner of the dingy street, he's at a loss for. "We aren't expected at all, may I remind you." He exhales brusquely, their response sounding more like a growl than a sigh as they near the dingy red telephone box placed at the end of the street. Diana's pedantic remarks usually didn't irk him this much, but with the nearing fullness of the moon and the gravity of their business tonight, he can't seem to quell the building frustration. "Diana, Teddy," she interrupts. "I had some issues securing our invitations, that's all. For watchmakers, they had more security than we thought. I had to get creative." As they reach the telephone booth, Teddy can feel his teeth grinding from the effort of not snapping at her. Diana's creative license, as she liked to put it, was often more violent than he would like, especially if the targets of her creativity were simply casualties that happened to have unfortunately strayed into her path. She can either sense his discomfort with her choice of words, or is simply too familiar with his chidings, because before he can reach the ministry's entrance, her hand catches his wrist, pulling him to a stop. They're safe, knocked out, and locked in their closet. Then, when he doesn't react, she pulls him to face her, fussing with the tie loosely wrapped around his neck. Their housekeeper comes tomorrow morning, has her own key and everything. They'll be fine. At that, Teddy relaxes, the sharp feeling in the bottom of his stomach subsiding. The Morinos had been married just last month, according to the prophet. He's just glad that he won't be seeing their obituary printed in tomorrow's edition. "Here's his wand, by the way," Diana says, handing over a cherry wood instrument that feels strange in Teddy's hand. "You remember the pictures?" Instead of replying, he simply closes his eyes, letting the familiar tingling sensation of change wash over his body. The suit he's been wearing tightens comfortably, the new proportions filling out the fabric as intended. His face takes a second longer, and when the tingling subsides, he spares a glance at Diana. Bright blue eyes stare back at him, the familiarity stinging the point in his chest where his old wounds still fester. Teddy coughs in surprise but quickly regains his composure. "Good, shall we?" He makes to open the door to the telephone box, but Diana is quicker, her lithe body slipping into the small space. They've done this before, so many years ago it feels like another life, but with their new bodies pressed against each other, he can't quite seem to catch his breath. Just a glance at Aria Moreno's eyes stirs up memories he needs to keep repressed, at least for tonight. "Teddy," Diana murmurs, her voice barely audible as the door clicks shut, trapping them in a space that seems to be tightening by the second. "Teddy, look at me." He changes a glimpse at her, expecting that devastating blue to sink its claws into his heart again, but the sharp feeling in his chest never comes. A second glance, the eyes don't stir as much pain as before. Their shape is slightly different, the luminescent blue just a shade darker. The freckle he expects below the left one is non-existent. The coil of tension in his body relaxes slightly as he slowly catches his breath. To her credit, Diana simply waits, her demeanor never shifting towards impatience as she would normally. It's only when he catches her gaze for a third time and nods that she reaches for the receiver and enters the 5 numbers they've memorized long ago. As the soft sound of the operator click washes over them, both their demeanors change. Diana rests a hand on his chest, and one of his own snakes around her waist, resting on the small of her back. Teddy resists the urge to fidget with the velvet gown as a cool woman's voice echoes through the telephone's receiver. Welcome to the Ministry of Magic. Please state your name and business. Samuel and Aria Marino, here to attend the Mysteries Banquet. It's Diana who takes control, not that he expected otherwise. To do so would be foolish. Please insert your invitation into the coin slot. Despite the meager space still available to them, she manages to pull out a golden card with black block writing from somewhere on her person. One edge of the card is tinged red, but he decides to stay silent as she folds the card in quarters and feeds the small square into the box. As much as he'd like to press the issue for creativity, to start an argument this early in the night would derail all their plans. But Diana never misses anything, and as the telephone box begins to move, he can feel her taking in every feature that now makes up his face. Come now, darling, she purrs, leaning forward to whisper in his ear, her lips grazing his skin ever so slightly. It's a party. Let's have some fun. The Department of Mysteries' yearly fundraiser has the atrium decorated in black and gold, the nauseating opulence covering the cracks that Samuel Marino would easily miss, details that Teddy can't seem to ignore. The unspeakables that mingled with the guests were few and far between, and the air about them is unmistakably on edge. And if he notices the apprehensive atmosphere, Diana certainly has, though she doesn't show it. He watches her from across the atrium, her dark green dress draped over a smaller frame than he's used to, but one that carries the unabashed confidence that only Diana possesses. She's currently caught up in a conversation with a woman Teddy pinpoints as a Hungarian diplomat and investor in the department. A seemingly absent diplomat, as his wife had arrived unaccompanied only minutes after they'd stepped out of the telephone box. Her easy smile, an exact replica of Aria Marino's, has a hint of a bite to it, her eyes flashing dangerously whenever her gaze lands on the far corner of the room where the shining golden gates stand. They both know that interacting with others at the event is a requirement, but while he's able to manage a respectable conversation with 2 reputable business owners without much boredom, Diana was always one to put action before talk. He can almost feel the pulsating beat of her heart from this distance, adrenaline already coursing through her lethal body. As she glances over at the gates once more, and one time too many in such a short span of time, he excuses himself from the 2 men, setting his untouched glass of scotch down on one of the many tables that litter the atrium. His path to Diana is convoluted as he attempts to avoid the mingling unspeakables, making his way across the flamboyantly decorated room as conspicuously as possible. He nods to a man who raises his glass in greeting, but quickly gestures towards his intended destination, playing the perfect picture of a man simply seeking out his wife. The facade quickly devolves, however, as bursts of green light flicker at the edge of his vision, Diana's sharp eyes darting back to the golden arches before a wolfish grimace settles over a face that was never meant for such wickedness. Teddy doesn't even spare a glance at the banquet's new arrivals. He simply grasps Diana's elbow and excuses the both of them from the Hungarian diplomat's wife. Aria, my dear, he angles himself in such a way to break her line of sight to the hallway of fireplaces that now echoes with the sounds of multiple sets of feet. Thought you might need a drink? A hostess passes by, Teddy's quick fingers deftly stealing one of the glasses of champagne that fill her tray. Then, with a twist of his hand, the glass slips, its contents spilling down Diana's front, her dress darkening even more as the liquid seeps into the fabric. For once, she seems to have been caught off guard, her eyes widening in surprise before narrowing dangerously. What do you think? A few heads have turned in their direction, and he swiftly interrupts her before they make a scene. My mistake, darling. Shall we go get you cleaned up? As she notices the audience they have, her eyes soften, but the tight grip she places on his arm to lead her away lets him know she's decidedly unhappy about the situation. Her grimace slips into a tight smile as they start to walk off towards an alcove nearby. It's only when they're out of sight from prying eyes and out of earshot from curious bystanders that she speaks. What the bloody hell was that? She hisses, her hair seeming to darken as her hold on the newfound appearance wavers in anger. Teddy ignores her, choosing instead to brandish San Marino's wand at the wall behind her, and as the doorway appears against the stone, he can feel the hair on the back of his neck bristle. Without a second glance, he slips through the unlocked barrier, Diana stumbling behind him as she refuses to let go of his arm. The door behind them shuts, blanketing them in total darkness before the soft light from the tip of his wand illuminates a set of stairs winding down into shadows. But before he can take a step into the blackness, Diana's nails dig into his arm. This wasn't the plan, Teddy, she growls, and he briefly wonders if perhaps she's more affected by the moon tonight than she let on. What the hell do you think you're doing? He simply gestures towards the spiral staircase, the movement of the light causing shadows to dance along the walls. I found a simpler way. With that, he starts down the stairs, Diana closely behind. Their winding path is broken up only by her angry protests, and at one point, the sharp ripping of cloth that he assumes to be her annoyance at the long gown finally satiated. When they finally reach the end of the staircase, a black handleless door awaits them. These bloody doors, Diana quips, just as Teddy says, open. The door swings open to reveal a dimly lit circular room, the floors and walls almost as dark as the passageway they came from. Nauseating familiarity seizes him, and this time it's Diana who leads the way, her ever-present grip on his arm forcing his feet to stumble forward until he's in the center of a room that haunts his nightmares. Dim blue light flickers from candles periodically placed between dozens of doors surrounding them, the eerie glow against the ever-present black marble causing a blinding headache to start behind his right eye. Teddy? Looking over at Diana is a mistake. Aria Marino's eyes are too similar underneath the icy blaze of the candles, an excruciating tear to his already shattered heart. Blood rushes through his ears, drowning out whatever it is Diana says next, her usually confident demeanor wavering as she watches his panic grow. And then she changes, back to her harsh features, blonded hair deepening to a chestnut brown not unlike his own, blue eyes replaced with dark irises that mirror every inch of the chamber. Teddy, she slaps him, and suddenly everything comes back into sharp focus. Get it together, Lupin, Diana chides, and he suddenly realizes that she's been propping him up with her own body. We don't have time for your bullshit. The door, he manages to croak out between harried breaths. Close the door. Swearing as she lunges toward their entrance, Diana kicks the door to the stairway closed. Almost instantly, the room begins to shift, spinning itself around until even the way they came is impossible to recollect. But the power of this room was to disorientate its unknown intruders, not keep out those it once housed. Records. It's little more than a breath, but a door to their left pops open nonetheless. The room beyond it is dazzlingly white, a stark contrast from the room of doors, and Teddy launches himself away from the nightmare. If Diana closed the door behind her or it swings shut itself, he can't be bothered to notice, but the sound of it slamming shut is enough to rein in his panic. Thankfully, Diana doesn't take to striking him again and goes straight for the filing cabinets that line the back wall of the immaculate room they're now in. Her earlier attempt at sympathy, now forgotten as tonight's assignment, is finally within reach. Ignoring the continuous ache in his chest, Teddy follows suit, making his way to the opposite end of the cabinets as his disguise melts away. The first drawer opens easily, the department's record keeper evidently assured that locks wouldn't be needed if no one could break in, but the files inside are simply floor plans. The next few drawers are the same, floor plans or other equally as unimportant files littering every inch. Fuck, Diana hisses, the rattling of a cabinet soon following. This one's stuck. Teddy crosses the room to tug on the drawer himself, drawing a frustrated glance from Diana. A quick flick of his wand does nothing, and this time it's his turn to swear under his breath. It's charmed shut. I'll get started on it. You look for the others, he muses, his eyes darting back to Diana, still sporting Aria Marino's face. And take off that face. It's unnerving. They continue their tasks for a few minutes more, Teddy attempting to open the locked drawer as Diana rips through the others, each of them working in silence. There's nothing to say to each other after all, nothing that hasn't already been said. When Diana finishes her perusal of the other files, she comes back to stand behind him, her sharp eyes following every movement he makes with his wand, the burning sensation of her frustration boring through his chest. Are you sure they're even here? What if they got rid of them? Teddy attempts to answer her, but before he can, a door opposite them opens, and a stocky figure enters the room before stopping short at the sight of them. Time seems to slow as the man's gaze bounces from Teddy to Diana and into the cabinets behind them, eyes widening in understanding. Diana, having turned at the sound of the new arrival, inhales sharply, and from the sliver of her profile that Teddy can see, the blood in her face seems to drain completely. Shit. When the man turns on his heel and sprints out the door, time catches up and Teddy's adrenaline kicks into overdrive. Subtlety is no longer a privilege they can afford, and the cabinet in front of him is quickly turned into scrap metal, hundreds of folders scattering from the explosion. Then the alarms start blaring, red lights washing over the excruciating whiteness. Diana, we have to go, he directs, his voice cutting through this resounding sirens, but she doesn't make a move. Diana, help me! When she turns back, her jaw is set in a dangerous snarl. He saw us. I'll handle it. It's now Teddy's turn for the blood to drain from his face as understanding dawns on him, and the only response he can muster is a forced nod. That's all the confirmation Diana needs as she sprints away, leaving Teddy to parse through the files before him. Diana's file is the first he finds, the heavy manila significantly thicker than any others amongst the disarray. His is more difficult, and whatever charms were used to protect the confidential records prevent him from summoning them. Frustrated, he drops to his knees, searching as fast as he can, eyes darting from page to page as fast as he can. He's about to throw another page over his shoulder when a label catches his eye. The name of the unspeakable has been crossed out with a thick black marker, but it doesn't obscure it entirely. And then underneath that, a name that has been the subject of dozens of nightmares he suffered through. Freedom. His stomach turns, and the flashing red lights and piercing alarm that he considered a curse only moments before become a blessing as they ground him against the panic that threatens to bubble over and overcome him. A muffled scream pierces through the room as his hand connects with the folder, a harsh reminder of Diana's current task. In only seconds, he's able to find his own name, and all three folders are quickly shoved in the back of his waistband, the thick manila sticking to the sweat on his skin, before he's chasing after the screams. The typical black tiles that line the hallways of the department flash red along with the torches along it, so starkly contrasted from the cool blue that he remembers. The cries he's searching for slowly become less deafened by the harsh alarm, until finally he bursts through a door to find Diana, struggling with the unspeakable who'd interrupted them before. Diana is straddling the man, her wand long forgotten as she brandishes her knife, the silver metal dripping with blood. Her eyes are wild, and Teddy realizes that her shrieks are just as loud as the man beneath her. How does it feel? Diana screeches, the knife plunging down into the unspeakable's throat, a spurt of blood splashing over onto the floor, deep crimson red staining the flawless white. How does it feel, Caraway? Teddy wants to feel the rush of revulsion come over him, wants to feel sympathy for the man struggling to breathe through the metal and blood obstructing his airway. If he were a better man, he might have done something to stop Diana in the pulsing stream of dwindling life. But the unspeakable had seen them without their covers, and that was a liability. He flicks the barbed wand through the air, a blast of green light striking the man between the eyes before they roll back and he takes his final breath. Then, anticipating her reaction, he summons Diana's knife, the blade twisting free from her grasp and eliciting a sharp growl of pure anger. When she lunges towards him, he's prepared, and they go tumbling towards the ground, blood soaking into their dress clothes. He manages to pin her arms above her head with one hand, the other sweeping up to press her own dagger against her throat, careful not to draw any blood. He was mine. You had no right. Diana's eyes are wild, her teeth gnashing together as if she means to bite him. Teddy presses the knife deeper into her skin. He was already dead, he responds coolly, and we will be too if we don't leave now, okay? She doesn't immediately respond, but her body relaxes slightly. Her eyes, still wild, begin to dart around the room instead of focusing solely on him, and if Teddy didn't know any better, he would swear there were tears welling in her eyes. Okay, Diana? Get off me, she growls, but the bite in her voice is gone. He lets her push him off her before taking off his jacket and wiping her knife with it, offering it back as a sign of good faith. Now let's get the fuck out of here. It's morning by the time they arrive at the hotel, the first rays of sunshine creeping over the horizon. Bloodied clothes have been traded for stolen garments from a house along the way, the occupants charmed into continuing their restful slumber as their closets were being ransacked. As soon as they reach the room, Teddy heads for the washroom, impatient to wash the dried blood off his skin. But no matter how long he scrubs at his skin, the red stains remain, and the droplets that run down his face are mostly tears. It's only when Diana joins him, her rough hands delicately washing away the gruesome blemishes, that he's able to breathe again. Teddy, she breathes, his name the first word either has spoken since escaping the ministry. The sound is almost too soft for Diana, the moment too intimate, yet she continues. I can be her for you, if you want, for tonight. She reaches up, her lips pressing against his, and for a moment he doesn't move, frozen underneath the stream of water that envelops them both. But then her tongue feathers against his bottom lip, and he deepens the kiss, his hands twining around Diana to pull her closer to his body. Fervent desire he was unaware still lingered underneath the adrenaline rush of tonight's activities awakens, and he pushes Diana against the cool tire of the shower wall. As her hands explore his body, he reciprocates, the pads of his finger urgently pressing into smooth skin, occasionally passing over raised scar tissue. Their mouths clash hungrily before Teddy lowers his head, his lips finding the pulse point behind Diana's ear that elicits a husky groan and nails the dig into his back. Teddy. This time, the word is hauntingly familiar, and Teddy wrenches himself away from Diana's grasp, eyes widening as he finally takes in the sight before him. Long blonde hair frames high cheekbones and eyes so blue that the ocean itself would be jealous. The bow-shaped mouth, the small smattering of freckles across a button nose, and the one he always looks for, under her left eye. Get out, his voice breaks as memories of the ghost before him come rushing back. Get out, Diana, he bellows, demand punctuated by his fists flying past her face, linoleum cracking along with bone. To her credit, Diana doesn't argue, her natural features quickly reappearing before she slips out from under his arm. When the door behind her clicks shut, Teddy sinks down to the ground, his heart re-breaking with every sob. And that's the end of Chapter 1 of Kingdom Keys.
Woo!
If anyone in the chat has questions, please feel free to post them. But for now, I think I will start with one or two of my own until you guys share questions for us. So first of all, Lo.
Mm-hmm.
Super mystery, super cool, super into it. But the summary of the story itself is rather vague. So what gave you the idea for starting it off with a heist? And is this going to be like a longer term heist fic? Was the heist just for now? Or what can you tell us about kind of what the planned trajectory is for this story?
So I don't expect it to be very long. I think when I originally kind of tried to plan it out, it was like 6 chapters. And it won't continuously be heists, but there will be heist-like adventures along the way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Intriguing. I love it. All right. Well, another question I have is we start off pretty dark right off the bat. And Teddy's a pretty dark character when typically for next gen, he's usually not. Are we going to get darker Teddy as the story unfolds? Can you tell us that? What happened? This in the story show, it says it's a Teddy Victoire story, but this was not Victoire. This is Diana. I'm curious what has happened in the past to make Teddy the way he is now.
Yeah, so I mean, it is fairly dark because it was written for our own dear Rogue Slytherin's anti-hero challenge. So I wanted to make sure he was sufficiently anti of the anti-hero. But yeah, in terms of Victoire, I guess, I mean, she is definitely an influence. What influence that is, I don't know if I can say because it's a bit of a spoiler. But I will say that I plan to address at least part of that in the next chapter if I ever get around to writing that in my week off.
Please do. I need it.
I will
another chapter. Something else I picked up on while reading this earlier and also just reading it now too is, it's magic. It's Harry Potter, so there's magic involved. But the way that you describe spells being cast is like so elegant. How do you do that?
I don't really know. I think I usually just kind of go off the general. I like the really swooping, beautiful magic things that you see in things like Avatar and like Waterbenders or like other magic shows where they're very dramatic and flouncy. Um, so I try to write like that as well when writing magic specifically with Harry Potter.
It reminded me so much almost of how a lot of times like if you're playing D&D and you're describing a spell that you're casting, it reminded me of that kind of level of detail with what's happening, and it just flows right into the whole narrative part of the story. It doesn't take away. It's like saying you never said Teddy casts he does the whatever the disguising spell is. It's just he just does it. I think that's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. In general, then, so you wrote this for Rogue Slytherin's anti-hero challenge. But what
Yes.
gave you the specific? How did you get the specific idea for this whole story?
So I'd been thinking about writing it ever since another challenge, Down in Flames, very specific aesthetic challenge, which was where Taylor gave an aesthetic board and was like, choose however many pictures and run with it. And I was looking at it and I saw these pretty like dresses and money and darkness and I think there was a quote about something dark and I was like, ooh, I can do something with that. Um, so I've kind of been toying with that idea. And then as the months went on and I was like, I should really write something, I should really write something, I never did. Um, and then the anti-hero challenge came about and I was like, I could do something with that. And I have a friend who I kind of bounced ideas off of and I was like, here's my baseline, what do you think? And she was like, well, what if you did this as well? And I was like, that's perfect. I love this. And it just kind of spawned from like a small challenge a few months ago. And then this one kind of like pushed me into it. And then a good friend.
Very cool. Looks like we have a question in the chat from Catherine. I think Black Ballet, Catherine. She says, I definitely desire the 6 chapters, if not more. Don't know if you can answer this question, but is there an organization that the main characters and Victoire were/are associated with?
Yeah. That's not much of a spoiler at all. So yeah. I mean, I tried to describe it in this chapter a little bit, and also the unspeakable, but the Department of Mysteries. And I will say that all 3 of them were associated with it, which is why they have some folders in there. Again, if I ever get around to writing the 2nd chapter this week, which is my goal of this upcoming week, you'll see what exactly is in those folders. But I will say at least one of them is an employee folder. Let's say HR. Diana is not great with HR.
It's so interesting. I'm really curious to see what you do with the Department of Mysteries because it's mysterious, but also we only see, such a small section of it in Order of the Phoenix and canon, and there's so many options and ways to do different things with it. So I'm really excited to see if we get to return there or just learning more about how it's structured based on the files that Teddy and Diana have taken with them.
Yes, it will definitely go into a part of that department that I think would definitely be there as part of a government organization.
Yeah. All right. Well, are there any other questions from the chat? Please write the next chapter. I am going to sign into my account again and bookmark this immediately so that I can get pinged whenever you do post the next chapter.
Oh,
because this is so good.
Thank you. I do have some of it written, but I have a bunch of free time this upcoming week. So that is my goal by Thursday is to get it written and then edit and post maybe Friday, maybe Saturday. Who knows? But hopefully this week.
Fantastic. Okay, it looks like there are not any more questions in the chat. So that I'd like to say thank you for joining me live for Fic Night tonight.
Of course.
Thank you for answering all of our questions. Next Fic Night will happen in probably about another month. So be on the lookout for the self-nomination thread up on the forums in the next couple of weeks. Until then, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.